Hello, this is Mentour Lawyer. I'm an attorney in the state of Florida with over almost 25 years of experience, including sometimes as a prosecutor and sometimes as a criminal defense attorney. For the most part, I've done litigation. In any case, I do have this channel, Deep Dive True Crime, and in it and my other channels, I do exactly that. I do a deep dive on criminal cases. In this particular case, there have been so many amazing channels that have done a lot of work already on this horrific case of the murder of 4 young college students in Moscow, Idaho, that got to all of our hearts. And a lot of people have put in a lot of work in trying to analyze data as it has been released, some of it truthful, some of it untruthful. Why am I going to talk about this case? Why have I been talking about this case? That's what I do. So, although there have been already many channels that have been covering this extensively, I want to put in my 2 cents as well, because it is a case that I care about and that I hope will result in some kind of justice for the victims and for their families. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to go through my very preliminary timeline that I created based on the probable cause affidavit that was drafted for the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. You see, my analysis will only be limited to that. It will probably become moot soon, depending on many factors, depending on what evidence is uncovered or has been uncovered already since the date of the probable cause affidavit, and some additional evidence that may have been in the hands of law enforcement that they decided not to include in the probable cause affidavit. There could have been a confession already by Kohberger, or some kind of a proffer where he's trying to meet with the prosecutors to give some story where supposedly he's innocent, and maybe he has an explanation about why the sheath of a knife that perhaps was used to commit the murders and that has his DNA could be at that location, and why his phone seems to be consistent with someone traveling to that location around the time of the murders, and so on and so forth. We don't know. There's a lot that we do not know. So let me go ahead and start scrolling through the affidavit very quickly so you can see what I'm going to be discussing today. And then at the very end, I'll have several questions that came to my mind as I read through the probable cause affidavit, perhaps from a defense attorney perspective, but also just from a general perspective, because I think that all of us hope that they got the right person, and that if it was him who committed this murder because of some sick idea that he wanted to be like the infamous people that he studied or anything like that, you know, I hope that they establish a proof beyond a reasonable doubt and they convict him if that's the case. So anyway, I have lots of questions that I would be asking both as a prosecutor in reviewing the probable cause affidavit or as a defense attorney. That's the kind of questions that I may be asking in the depositions of the law enforcement officers. And there may be a misspelling here and there, so I apologize for that. I did this all tonight. So here's the document. Let's go back up to the beginning, and I'm going to go through it step by step. All right? Okay. So we begin at the top, at the very beginning. So first of all, I just wanted to take a look at the King Road home. I'm going to call it the King Road home in this affidavit, which is at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. So if you see, I kind of circled with green where the home is located. I have some better pictures. On blue, I indicate the road that is called Queen Road. So for some reason, even though this house seems to be on Queen Road or closer to Queen Road, it is an address that is on King Road, which is at the top. There's a black arrow that shows you King Road. I also show you what's north, what's south, east, and west. And on the house, at the bottom floor and the entrance of the first floor is pointing north. Okay, so the back of the house would be south, where you see the porches and all that in the back of the house. Okay, this is a view from, I think, Google Earth. They, for some reason, erased the home, but you can see here is like driving on Queen Road, and the house would be on your right, and I think you'd be driving eastward here to go towards the direction of the home that would be on your right. And then here the house would be immediately to your right, and then if you kept going on Queen Road, there's some, looks like some kind of commercial building with a little road to a back parking lot back there, and there's some additional parking up here at the top of this hill. So it's kind of like going up a hill. Obviously, when I refer to the suspect vehicle, that would be the white Hyundai Elantra. All right, so here's the timeline. At some unknown date, prior to all of this, Kohberger apparently posts on Reddit seeking participants for a research project about the psychology of decision-making by criminals during the commission of crimes. So that is mentioned in the probable cause affidavit, actually, as one of the factors that they wanted the judge to consider. Then between June of 2022 and November 12 or so of 2022, there's information that was obtained from cell phone records that show the Kohberger phone being consistent with being in the area of the King Road home at least 12 times before the November 13 murders. And on 11 of those 12 times, this happened very late at night or early in the morning. In the fall of 22, some unknown date, it's not given in the probable cause affidavit, Kohberger had joined, obviously, Washington State University to pursue a Ph.D. in Criminology, and then he also applied at some point for an internship with Pullman Police Department. And in an essay that he wrote in his application, he mentions his interest in helping a rural police department, kind of offending the employer that you're trying to get a job from, with iCloud investigation tools. On August 21st, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was detained on a traffic stop in Moscow, Idaho, by Corporal Duke. Kohberger was the sole occupant of the 2015 white Elantra that had, at the time, a Pennsylvania tag. Kohberger provided his phone number, ending in 8458, during that traffic stop, which was recorded. And so they were able to pull it up and I think find his phone number by looking at the video. At 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. that same day, Kohberger's phone had been consistent with being in the area of the King Road home. And then at 11:37, so 2 minutes later, that's where Kohberger was stopped by Deputy Duke. He was stopped at the intersection between Farm Road and Pullman Highway, and here it is. You can see that here's the King Road residence at the bottom of this map, and then you drive about 1.7 miles, kind of like going back towards Pullman where he had come from, and that intersection he got stopped. That's where it happened. I wanted to give you guys an idea of what I found through internet research of cell phone towers in the Moscow, Idaho area. And as you can see, there seems to be one right at the center of the city. It may be the downtown. I'm not very familiar with the city, of course. And there's one more to the south, and then there's one way up to the north. Pullman would be to the left here, so I didn't do any research about any cell phone towers in that area, but I wanted to give you at least what I found for the Moscow. So this is probably the only information here that is not from the probable cause affidavit, because unfortunately they really don't give a lot of details about the cell phone towers. It's really limited, and it's just with the purpose of trying to convince a judge to sign a probable cause affidavit, so you didn't have to have all those details. All right, so here the cell phone towers. I also wanted to give you guys an idea. So this would be the travel suggestions to go from this guy's apartment to the King Road residence. And you see there are 3 different ways. One is 20 miles, one is 20 miles, and the other one is 23 miles. I'm sorry, 20 minutes, and 23 minutes. So the going through 270 would be just slightly longer than going through this back road that goes through the Pullman Airport. Pullman and Moscow Regional Airport. Anyway, that's just so you can have an idea of the distance between the 2 cities. So Pullman would be here on the left, where Washington State University is, and Moscow would be here on the right. And apparently from everything that we have heard, not on the affidavit, actually I think it's mentioned in the affidavit, that a lot of students do travel from Washington State University to Moscow for fun. People travel between the 2 cities, maybe to go to bars or things like that in Moscow, for example. Okay, October 14, 2022. Kohberger was detained by traffic stop by Washington State University officer. The sole occupant of the 2015 white Elantra that he was driving with a PA tag was Kohberger. On Saturday, November 12, 2022, this is just hours before the murder, at 9 p.m., Ethan and Xana arrived at Sigma Chi house. At 10 p.m., Kaylee and Madison arrived at the Corner Club. On Sunday, November 13, 2022, at 1:30 a.m., Kaylee and Madison leave Corner Club and go to the grub truck for a meal. At 1:45 a.m., Ethan and Xana leave the Sigma Chi house, that's a fraternity house, and just a minute later or so, this is approximate times, everything is approximate, they arrive to the King Road home, where Xana lives, and Ethan was going to be a guest that night. At 1:56 a.m., Kaylee and Madison get to the King Road home via a ride. At 2 a.m., all 5 roommates plus guest Ethan are at the King Road home. At 2:42 a.m., the Kohberger phone location is consistent with him still being at his apartment. This is 42 minutes after everybody is already home. At 2:44 a.m., however, the Kohberger vehicle is consistent with the suspect vehicle driving north. Okay, so this is a video, video of a vehicle consistent with the suspect vehicle shown driving north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way. At 2:47 a.m., the Kohberger cell phone location is consistent with him having left home and driving through Pullman, Washington. So remember that those phones are not extremely, the phone records and cell tower records are not extremely accurate, and they're gonna give you approximations of locations, not a precise location. In essence, law enforcement was trying to match the video information with the cell phone data to see whether They were consistent, and they seem to be consistent. So, at 2:47 a.m., Kohberger's cell phone location was consistent with leaving his home and driving through Pullman, Washington. 2:47 a.m., the Kohberger phone goes off or goes on airplane mode, or also, of course, could be on a location without any service, which seems the least likely possibility, given the rest of the information that we get in this affidavit. At 2:53 a.m., a vehicle consistent with the suspect vehicle is shown on video being at southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington, driving towards SR 270, which connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. And I did show you the directions above. Let me go back real quick and show you 270. So 270 would be the middle one, not the one on blue, but the middle one, which is a little bit of a longer route, but takes about the same time, 20 minutes. Okay? At 3:26 a.m., so again, the cell phone is off at this time. 3:26 a.m., at least it's not being captured by any cell towers. 3:26 a.m., the suspect vehicle is at the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow. At 3:28 a.m., the suspect vehicle is westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 in Moscow. And this video shows no front license plate. 3:29 a.m. to 4:03 a.m., the suspect vehicle makes 3 passes by the King Road home, then apparently leaves via Walenta Drive. Before 4 a.m. So the vehicle seems to appear up to 4:03 a.m. I'm assuming that they corrected the timestamps of every video that they looked at to make sure that it was accurate, or to make sure that it was adjusted to show the precise time. And so there seems to be some movement of the vehicle, the suspect vehicle that supposedly would match Kohberger's vehicle's description, or his actual vehicle, up to 4:03 a.m. This is approximate, but before 4 a.m., the roommate Dylan, who was on the second floor, went to sleep in her second floor bedroom. At about 4 a.m., according to the 2 roommates who survived, all 5 roommates were either asleep or in their room. At about 4 a.m., Xana received a DoorDash order at the house. At about 4:04 a.m., the suspect vehicle was driving around the King Road home. Makes a 3-point turn at the intersection of King Road and Quinn, and then drives eastwards towards King Road home. So let me go back up to the picture real quick, and then we'll come back to this page. So the 3-point turn, maybe because there were a lot of vehicles, would be right here at this intersection between, you see the end of the black arrow, that's King Road, and then this blue arrow shows you Queen Road. So at this intersection right there, that's where, for some reason, the vehicle makes a 3-point turn, and then keeps going basically up the hill in the direction of the King Road home, which would be on the vehicle's right. So up east, you can see the east at the bottom of this picture. Let's go back down to page 7. So Dylan gives some times that seem a little inconsistent with the vehicle timing, right? Because if we assume that Kohberger was alone and was driving that vehicle at 4:04 a.m., driving towards the home, maybe parking, maybe deciding I'm going to do this or not. It might take a minute or two. So you would assume that the earliest he could have gone in would be like 4:05, 4:06 a.m. So Dylan says that approximately at 4 a.m., again, this is approximate. She was probably not checking her clock or her cell phone or whatever, but she says approximately 4 a.m., she was awoken by what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms. So I question whether this is the start of the murders or not. So I would obviously ask a ton of questions to Dylan. What do you mean that it sounded like Kaylee playing with the dog? Was the dog barking? Could you hear Kaylee talking? Did it sound like they were having fun? I mean, what exactly did you hear? Obviously, there's a ton of questions that I would ask, but that's how they describe it on the probable cause affidavit. So we're going to put it like that for now, and that's it. So sounded like Kaylee playing with the dog. And so even though I put here started the murders in the third floor, unless it is maybe 4:05, 4:06 a.m., I mean, she would have to come in probably to the second floor and then go up to the third floor. That would be probably 4:06 the earliest. Then next, Dylan. So there are several things that Dylan hears, and they don't say exactly how many minutes apart they were. So we're giving rough estimates here. So around 4 a.m., she hears something that sounds like Kaylee playing with her dog. A little bit after that, I put here 4:01 plus a.m., Dylan hears what she thinks is Kaylee again, saying something like, "There's someone here." Again, there's no details given as to the tone, whether this was like some kind of a whisper. How could she hear that from the second floor? Where did she think Kaylee was? Like, was Kaylee out of her room? I mean, it's just very generic description. I mean, very, very limited description of what Dylan has said. Of course, obviously they have interrogated her. They have questioned her, I'm sure, for a long time and got all the details that they could out of her. But there's very little in the probable cause affidavit. All they say is that after 4:01, the next thing she hears is someone saying, "There's someone here." And then they also say, the police speculates that this also could have been Xana. And then Dylan says that she opens the door and looks out of her second floor bedroom and then sees nothing, goes back inside. The reason why law enforcement says that it could have been Xana is because there's evidence that Xana was awake using TikTok at 4:12 a.m. So did Xana notice somebody before and then continue using TikTok? We don't know. Again, I have a ton of questions for Dylan, but I'm not going to get those answered. So we're just going to go with the affidavit. So 4:12 a.m., Xana is still alive and apparently using her TikTok app. After 4:12 a.m., short time after, we don't know exactly how long, Dylan now hears crying from Xana's room. And Xana is in the second floor as well. So she opens her door again. And then it's not clear whether she opens the door and then she hears a male voice. Not clear whether it sounded like Ethan, for example, or somebody she didn't know. That wasn't described in the affidavit. But it says, "It's okay. I am going to help you." This is paraphrased. They say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." So those may not be the precise words that Dylan gave, or maybe Dylan couldn't give precise words and she just described it like that. It's something like, "Oh, it's okay, I'm going to help you," but didn't give the tone or anything like that. At least it's not described in the probable cause affidavit. So I made some notes for myself here. This is a living document. I have it in Word, and in essence, when you're an attorney, you do yourself a timeline, a chronology, And that is very, very important to get a big picture, to understand all the facts of the case. And of course, as new evidence comes in, you can add to the timeline and you can subtract from the timeline if something is incorrect or something is challenged. You may put a notation on the initial note. So in any case, so that's for 12 a.m. Again, no description of the crying and of the tone. So, I mean, I can imagine, for example, you know, if Kohberger claims that he had an accomplice, you know, he might be talking to his accomplice. Or if Kohberger claims that he came in after the murders because he was fascinated with these people and then found out that, or saw that someone else went in there to commit these murders, then he came in upon Xana and maybe she was still alive and she said, it's okay, I'm going to help you. Who knows? It's hard. There's no context. There's very little information given. So that's all we have. Again, the probable cause affidavit has very limited purpose, and that's why there's not so much detail in it. At 4:17 a.m., security camera at 1112 King Road picks up distorted audio of voices or whimper, and then this is followed by a loud thud and a dog barking. So this is all happening at 4:17 a.m. So remember that Xana was active on TikTok at 4:12. Dylan believes that maybe shortly thereafter she heard crying from Xana's room. And then at 4:17 now, there's some kind of recording that supports the fact that something is happening, something bad perhaps is happening, probably the murders, right, inside of the King Road home. I wanted to give you an idea of the location. So this is the floor plan for the second floor. So let me explain what all of this is. And the outsides of the walls here, I put north, south, east, and west. So north would be where, if you go down to the first floor, that would be the entrance. Here on the second floor, the screen doors is actually towards the back. You can see I put an arrow. For K would be Kohberger, assuming the probable cause affidavit is correct, right? Kohberger would have been walking in this direction of this purple arrow. Dylan would have been right outside, I'm assuming, right outside of her door in this living area. So I put a D for her with a little dot that would be where she is. So she says that he's coming towards her, but then obviously Kohberger would have to turn towards the foyer, towards the kitchen where the sliding doors would be. So he would have left that way. So it's unclear whether he would have seen her or not, especially if she froze and didn't move. The lack of movement while he was walking towards the screen doors would have helped not alert his, not alert him that there is some movement going on. Of course, there are many theories why he escaped. He was escaping at that moment. Why he didn't kill Dylan. I think, obviously, there was a lot of commotion that happened. It's obvious that this made Dylan react 3 times to open the door. So the killer, so the K could be for killer or for killers or for Kohberger. So the killer or killers probably were concerned by now, having done 4 murders, right? 2 upstairs, 2 in the second floor, that they were taking too long, that there was too much noise, that others inside the home or outside may have heard and called 911. So that explains perhaps why he just decided to rush out and drive away at a fast rate of speed, because that's what was next seen on video. So anyway, on this picture I wanted to show you, so Ethan's and Xana's bodies were found in this top left corner bedroom, and 50 feet towards where this green arrow is pointing, 50 feet away, is where the security camera would have been. So 50 feet is not that far, and that security camera is what caught the sounds of the whimpering, of the thud, and then of the dog barking. So 4:17 a.m. plus, Dylan again hears crying, opens door, sees male figure. Actually, gender was identified, so that's incorrect. I'll fix that later. Clad in black, so sees a male figure. Skip the parenthetical there. It's a work in progress. Clad in black, mask covering mouth and nose, walking towards her. She described him as being about 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, athletic built, bushy eyebrows. Nothing about his eyes, hair, shoes, gloves, color of skin, nothing like that, even though the mask is described as only covering the nose and the mouth. None of that information was at least discussed on the probable cause affidavit, so it's unclear whether she just didn't know. She did say that she was in a state of frozen shock, so maybe that's all that she could describe, and it is unknown if she was shown a photo lineup with Kohberger to see whether she could identify him out of several photos that were of people consistent with her description. So she says that the male walked past her and went towards the sliding glass door. Didn't do anything to her, of course. And then she locked herself in her room. 4:27 a.m. to 4:25 a.m. 4:17 a.m. to 4:25 a.m. Sorry. The killer leaves the King Road home via sliding glass door on the second floor, perhaps due to the loudness generated and the fact that it caught the attention of another roommate, assuming that he saw Dylan. Likely assumed that someone already called 911. This is just my assumption, my notes. All we know is that sometime between 4:17 and 4:25 or so, that's when he would have walked out, the killer would have walked out through the second floor screen doors in the back of the building. At 4:20 a.m., so I think that the probable cause affidavit says up to 4:25 a.m., which I don't understand, because they say that at 4:20 a.m., the suspect vehicle is traveling at a high rate of speed, leaving the King Road residence area. So I think that I have no idea why they put up to 4:25 a.m. as the time of the murder. That doesn't make any sense when compared to the rest of the affidavit. So I'm assuming that that's just a mistake on their part. Should have been, between 4 a.m. I think, or 4:05 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. because that's when they see the vehicle again. So it would be maybe 4:19 a.m. A window of about 12-15 minutes perhaps to do all those 4 horrific murders. Hi everybody. I'm not ignoring everybody, but let me finish with the read through and then we can talk. But anyway, the probable cause affidavit does say that at 4:20 a.m. the suspect vehicle was seen traveling at a high rate of speed, leaving the King Road residence area. And then shortly thereafter, it was south on Walenta Drive, and then at 4:48 a.m., Kohberger's cell phone starts connecting with the cell phone tower again. So it's either turned on or is turned off from airport mode, or is now in an area with service, which of course is a possibility that is not really likely in this case based on everything else we know, especially since the last place where it had service would have been in Pullman, and now it's somewhere near Blaine, Idaho. So I'm sure that there would have been service along the way. So it's either off or on airport mode. I'm sorry, I put airport mode, airplane mode. Again, I'm working late tonight to do this, so there's some typos that I'll fix down the line. So airplane, not airport mode. Oh my gosh. So anyway, here is the area that they describe. So here's Moscow and Pullman right on the top of this picture. And then here's I put in red, the area where they say that the phone goes back on. So he's going south somewhere towards this Genesee, and maybe about how long? So if the murder, let's say the latest it happened was 4:20 a.m. and he immediately got on, okay, let's say 4:19 a.m. So we're talking about almost 29 minutes later is when the phone goes back on, somewhere near Blaine, Idaho, north of Genesee. So here's Blaine and here's Genesee. So somewhere there is where the phone is on. Okay? Between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., according to cell phone records, the phone is consistent with traveling south on Idaho State Highway 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then west to Uniontown, Idaho, then north back to Pullman, Washington. I guess I should have included a picture of that, but here you can see, here's Genesee, at the bottom here is Uniontown, and then of course north. So there would be Pullman. So basically traveling the very long way back to Pullman, to where he lives. Instead of going the direct route through 270, he's going way down south, then turning west, and then going back up. At least that's what the phone records seem to indicate. Then video of a 5:25 a.m. video of a vehicle consistent with the suspect vehicle is seen in Pullman, Washington at the Washington State University campus. There are several videos that catch it. 5:27 a.m. Video consistent with the suspect vehicle is northbound on Stadium Way at Nevada Street. And then the Kohberger phone records were consistent with that location as well. And 5:30 a.m. Kohberger phone location consistent with Kohberger arriving back at home. So again, this is based on his phone records, nothing about any surveillance cameras at the place where he lives, no indication of that. At least even if there was, I guess there may have been one and erased by the time that his name came to their attention. So 9 a.m. Kohberger phone location was consistent with leaving home and going to Moscow, Idaho. This is again still on November the 13th. So if he arrives home at 5:30, like 3.5 hours later, he's already leaving home again and going back to Moscow, Idaho. And again, I do watch some of the other channels, and I agree with some of the speculation that this may have been because he wanted to, if he was Kohberger and if he wanted to do a heinous crime and he wanted to be infamous, whether caught now or maybe down the line for a horrific murder, and he wanted to see whether what he did gained attention and notoriety and so on and so forth, he might be interested in find out, hey, how come there's nothing in the media yet about this? Nothing on social media, nothing anywhere about what happened. So he might have gone back to look over there to see whether there were cops in there or something. The other thing could be that he went back because he realized, hey, crap, where is that sheath that I had with me for the knife, right? So that may be another reason that, another possible reason why he would have gone back. But we don't know, and we don't get to ask him right now, so we'll just leave it at that. He went back to the area of Moscow, and he was in the area consistent with the cell phone tower that services the King Road home area between 9:12 and 9:21. So for 9 minutes he's in this area, and then from 9:21 to 9:32, pretty fast, he's returning back to his home in Pullman, arriving at 9:32 a.m. That seems to be a little bit on the fast side, because when we did the maps above, they all say about 20 minutes distance. So bizarre. That would take only 11 minutes. So maybe he wasn't as close to the home as they suggest. 12:36 p.m. So right after noon, cell data consistent with Kohberger's phone shows him being in the area of Kate's Cup of Joe Coffee at 810 Port Drive in Clarkson, Washington. And then video from a neighbor, U.S. Chef Store, shows the suspect vehicle at the same time. So again, they're showing how the phone records and videos of the suspect vehicle match. Here's a Cup of Joe, which is quite far from Pullman, you see. So on the top here is just the area of Washington State University, and 33 miles and 43 minutes away would be where this Cup of Joe would be located. And Moscow would be, of course, a lot closer there. But he passes through Colton and Uniontown. Remember that he supposedly went from Genesee on the right here to Uniontown and then back up on I-95. So in a sense, this is going back part of the way through the roads that he had used supposedly on his escape route, right? At 12:46 p.m. to 1:04 p.m. So for about 18 minutes, both his cell phone data plus store surveillance videos from Albertsons in Clarkston, Washington, show him being there shopping. I should note, for the benefit of Mr. Kohberger, if he loves Albertsons, that's the closest Albertsons to Pullman, Washington. There is none on Pullman, there's none on Moscow, so he has to drive all the way down to Clarkston, to this area, to find the Albertsons. So who knows? Maybe he loves Albertsons. Here's the Albertsons. There is a Safeway, though, in Pullman. Before 4 p.m. So this is according to the probable cause affidavit, which does not mention when a 911 call was made, when the police first arrived. None of that is mentioned. So I'm not addressing that on the timeline until official information comes out of that. So 4 p.m., before 4 p.m., sometime before 4 p.m., on November the 13th, the police arrive. They find the bodies. Kaylee's dog still alive and in her room. Well, it is alive, not it's still alive. It's alive in her room. And that's the dog that she shared with her ex-boyfriend, with whom she had broken up recently, and who a lot of people had suggested before Kohberger, and still some suggest that he was involved. And they used the fact that his dog was not killed as one of the reasons why he should be a suspect. But I don't go there because I don't have any information, and law enforcement, obviously, I'm sure, has to look at him very thoroughly and are not concerned about him. So I don't think that we should go and speculate on such things when there's obvious evidence pointed elsewhere at this time. So until there's something solid that the law enforcement finds that would connect someone else, then I think it's fine to assume that the guy was acting solo. Anyway, so before 4 p.m., police arrives. At 4 p.m., Corporal Payne, who writes the probable cause affidavit, is given a walk through the scene. After 4 p.m., but no time is given, Payne sees the 10 leather knife sheath by Kaylee's body. Again, there's no time given for when he sees it. There's no time given or date given for when the sheath is processed and DNA found on it, and there's no time given for when the Idaho State Police finds a single source of male DNA on the button snap of the knife sheath. No time given for when the DNA test was done. What results showed nothing. 5:32 p.m. to 5:36 p.m. again on November 13, the day of the murder, Kohberger's phone is consistent with him being in the area of Johnson, Idaho. So here's Johnson, and you can see that here's to the left is Genesee, up there is Moscow, up there is Pullman, Colton. So now he's east of Moscow, quite east of Moscow. But then the phone is turned off, or is put on airplane mode, or is in a location with no service for almost 3 hours. At 8:30 p.m., the phone is again hitting cell phone towers, but police doesn't say where. They only say that based on whatever they find, it is that his location was consistent with traveling through the same areas that he had traveled immediately after the murder. That's what they say. So that's November 13. That's where it ends. 8:30 p.m. He's back somewhere. That's it. They don't say anything more about that day. November 14, the probable cause affidavit, for some reason, mentions that Kohberger's phone connects to cell tower from Moscow, Idaho, but the investigators believe he did not go there that day. They don't offer any sort of explanation as to why. Is it possible that the cell phone could hit that Moscow tower from Pullman? Is it possible that somebody else was using his phone that day, the day after the murders? No explanation is given. This is just mentioned out of the blue in the probable cause affidavit. By the way, I noticed that I didn't mention anything about the latent shoe print. I probably would have put it on the timeline, so I'm just going to make a note of that I'll add a note to the fact that the latent shoe print was found. Although, to be perfectly clear, in this affidavit, in this timeline, the probable cause affidavit doesn't make any connection whatsoever between these van shoes consistent or a latent shoe print consistent with a Van's shoe and Kohberger. No connection was made anywhere in the affidavit. So I'll still make a note and add it to the timeline. So at 8:30 p.m., that's when the phone goes back on. November 14, I already mentioned what happened on the 14th, and on the 18th, 4 days later, that's when Kohberger registers his white Elantra with the state of Washington. And later, it doesn't say when, how, is it days later? how long later? Hours later, days later, he gets the new tags front and back for the Elantra. November 25 now, we're going a week later, a week after the 18th. And the Moscow Police Department asks area law enforcement to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra in the area. On November 29, 2022, in the early morning hours, at 12:28 a.m., Washington State University officer Daniel Tiengo runs a query and finds a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania tag registered to a Bryan Kohberger, who resided at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201, Pullman, Washington. Here again are the directions from Kohberger's home to the King Road residence. And he would have used the middle one through 270. That seemed to be his favorite way to go. Here's a picture of the place where he lived at. At 12:58 a.m., Washington State University officer Curtis Whitman finds a 2015 white Elantra. So this is in the same day, early morning hours. Those Washington State University officers are busy. One runs a query and finds the Elantra, and another one finds a white Elantra in the parking lot of the apartments where Kohberger lives. So within minutes of each other, two officers from Washington State University find potentially the suspect vehicle. At least per the probable cause affidavit, that's the vehicle they believe was the one. December 13, 2022. Kohberger vehicle is at Loma, Colorado. By the way, I should probably also add when. I don't think it was given in the affidavit, but when did FBI narrow down the year of the Elantra? So I should put that. I'm making notes. So when they gave their first estimation of the year of the make and model of the vehicle, and then when they adjusted that. I don't think it's given in the probable cause affidavit, but I would like to have that information at least. So I might put a unknown date somewhere in late November, probably, right? All right. So then December 13, 2022, the Kohberger vehicle is consistent per the phone records, being in Loma, Colorado, then on the 15th is in Hancock County, Indiana. On the 16th, it's in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, where his parents live. And he's seen on video, apparently someone consistent with his looks is seen on video at 2:26 p.m. alone in the vehicle. On December 23, 2022, they applied for a broader cell phone records warrant for 24 hours before and 24 hours after the murder for Kohberger's phone. Then they received those records the same day. On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents get trash from the Kohberger residence. On December 28, the next day, the Idaho State Police already tested it and found some kind of a link between Kohberger and the DNA found in the trash. On December 29, therefore, after having that DNA link, they draft, or they at least execute. I'm sure that the drafting had been happening for some time, but they finalize and execute the probable cause affidavit for the arrest of Bryan Kohberger, which was signed under penalty of perjury. There were a ton of questions that came to mind as I read the probable cause affidavit. I have read it a few times already. And then when I did these notes here with some of the questions, I'm sure that I missed a ton of my own questions because I wasn't writing them down. They're just in my head. But here are some of them. So here's some of the key questions that I would have, both from a prosecutor or from a defense attorney perspective, because both sides would ask the same questions, because both sides assume that the other side will ask the questions as well. So, was Dylan shown a photo lineup? Was she not able to identify Kohberger? Did Dylan describe the voices a little better so that they can maybe even have her listen to Kohberger and some other similar voices and see if she can recognize it? Was the voice description that she gave, if any, consistent with Kohberger's voice? Of course, voice can change. I mean, the tone can change. This was during the commission of a heinous crime, so if at some moment she heard her voice, he might have been loud, screaming, whispering. We do not know. So that's why I would have asked a lot more details from her. And maybe they did. We just don't have the interrogations at this time, or the police interviews. When exactly was the sheath found? Why was it not seen earlier? When was the DNA on the sheath found? When was the DNA on the sheath first tested? Was that before or after the investigators came up with the Kohberger name? Again, this is because there's always going to be attorneys, defense attorneys, who are going to say, hey, the government's dirty. This was a highly publicized crime. There was huge pressure to solve the crime. They wanted to get this guy, so they had to establish some connection to him. And somebody planted the DNA on this knife sheath, right? That's the expected, if the guy's going to fight this, even if he doesn't testify and give a crazy story that would exonerate him, if it is all about just challenging the state's evidence, then obviously they're going to try to challenge it that way. That's one of the ways they're going to try to challenge the DNA, is the possibility that somebody planted it, just like in the OJ case, right? O.J. Simpson, for those who are not as old as I am. All right. Any friends or bars that Kohberger visited or frequented in a location that would be hitting off the same cell phone tower as the tower that generally serves the King Road home? So obviously, all of this evidence that the probable cause affidavit suggests points to some potential stalking of these residents, of the people, of the girls and the young ladies who live there, in the idea that eventually he's going to commit a murder at the house, would be shaken. This theory would be shaken significantly if we now found out that he dated a girl who lived, 10 houses away on another little street nearby for a few months. Who knows, right? For a few months before the murder. Or if he frequented a couple of bars in Moscow, Idaho, that were open late at night and early in the morning hours when his cell phone was consistent with that location, and that would primarily hit on the same tower that covers the King Road home. So that's, of course, all those questions about the cell phone tower records and the analysis and all that would come out. And, as a prosecutor, I would want to know, what are the weaknesses in our position here? And, have you found out about any other possible places that Kohberger was visited that would hit on the same tower? So I also would want to find out the general area of coverage for each of the cell phone towers that are being discussed on the probable cause affidavit. Any other potential suspects with bushy eyebrows? Definitely want to know about that. How many white Elantras that match the criteria found in the 50-mile radius? I want to know how many white Elantras, as they were searching for this white Elantra, how many white Elantras did they, learn about? And have they cleared everybody else as potentially being involved? And of course, this could have been a white Elantra rented 500 miles away driven to this location for this murder. So, you know, it's not just the white Elantras there that are potentially gonna be the actual suspect vehicle. But certainly, like I said, the fact that they have some cell phone records that match with the videos is very helpful to the prosecutors, law enforcement in this case. Unfortunately, you know, was it smart to turn off the cell phone at the time of the murder? Of course, it looks suspicious, but it would be a lot worse if he had left it on and now you have the cell phone matching everything. So, sort of dumb that he took the cell phone in the first place, that he had it on that day at all. I mean, he probably should have pretended that he was doing TikTok until 11, and the last thing on his phone is TikTok, and shut it off, whatever. But anyway, not gonna give any murderers any ideas. So, forget I just said that. I would want to know if there's not one camera anywhere that caught the license plate of the suspect vehicle, not even close enough to identify whether it was a Washington tag or a Pennsylvania tag. I'm curious about that as a prosecutor or defense attorney. What's the difference in what the FBI team could see in the videos of the suspect vehicle that made them change the range of the year of the Elantra? So if at first they gave a range that didn't cover the 2015 year, and then they were shown additional videos, and now they changed the range, I would want to know what made them give the initial interpretation, which was wrong. What did they see on the new videos that made them change it again? Was it because it was better quality videos? Was it because the initial videos that they saw and analyzed showed something that wasn't there, and then on the subsequent videos they can see better? I mean, definitely there will be a lot of questions about all those videos and why did the FBI change the range first from one that wouldn't match Kohberger to one that matches Kohberger's vehicle. And when did that happen? Was it after or before they found excuse me, they found out about Kohberger? Because if at first they were just in general asking for Elantras, that they find out about Kohberger, who's studying criminal justice, who has this Reddit post. We do not know when law enforcement read about this Reddit post. So you see, as a defense attorney, they might want to be asking, hey, wait a second. When did the FBI change its opinion about the range? Was it after you guys knew about Kohberger and his 2015 Elantra, or before? And what exactly was the basis for changing that opinion? So, of course, there's a ton more evidence that must exist already that has been processed since that was not included in the probable cause affidavit, and they already have it, that has been processed since the probable cause affidavit was drafted. What statements Kohberger made since his arrest, what key evidence has been found or processed since the probable cause affidavit was done. Was it good or bad for the Kohberger is guilty movement here? You know, the charges. Do they support the charges, or do they help Kohberger in any way? I would like to know. And we're not going to know until more information comes out. Perhaps if it is similar as in Florida, those records become public records once they're disclosed through discovery. I do not know the law in the state of Idaho, so that may be or may not be when they become a public record. We'll see. Did law enforcement find any connection between the sheath and Kohberger other than the DNA? Pictures of him with his knife, receipt in his house that he bought the knife, statements from his family members about the knife. Family is supposedly cooperating, so details for, I would want to have more details for a lot of the conclusory statements that are made in the probable cause affidavit. So a lot of stuff was given in a conclusory manner without explaining in detail how they arrive at the conclusions. Like, for example, at the very end, when they say that on November 13 in the evening, he was driving through the same areas that he had been driving immediately after the murder. So what's the basis for that conclusion? I would want to know all that. So those are just a few of the questions, and that's all I have for today, other than saying hello to you guys. So thanks for being here. This is very late for me here in Tallahassee, Florida. We are at 2:12 a.m. I am a full-time practicing attorney, but I also, of course, have this channel, and I care deeply about every case I cover, and I know that there's a lot of excellent channels that are really doing a great job in this case, and there have been a lot of lawyers and defense attorneys and psychologists and whoever. I mean, a lot of people talking about this case. So I'm not sure if I have too much to add, because I am just a lot more conservative. I'm not going to be making any proclamations of who's guilty and who's not guilty until we have a lot more. This is, that's why we have a criminal trial system where the state has to put in evidence that is admissible, that it has to be tested by the defense. And so that's what we got to do. We got to wait. We got to be patient and see the process through and continue analyzing as evidence comes out. I'll definitely do that. I'm not shy of analyzing information that comes out. I'm not saying it is improper to do so. But certainly, anybody who's already concluding that somebody's guilty or not guilty are crossing lines that I think shouldn't be crossed. I think that certainly it's fair to say that things don't look very good for Bryan Kohberger, but the truth is that we haven't heard anything at all from him's side, whether he has any defense. Maybe, like I said, that he will just admit to everything. We don't know. So he did not have a front license plate until he changed to the Washington registration and he received the tags for the state of Washington. Yes, attorneys are esquires. And I mean, we sign off as ESQ for esquire, but that's off topic. So we can have a video about esquire if you want someday. So not really relevant here. We're talking about a horrendous murder. So if you guys have any questions, hi 58. And that is correct. In the probable cause affidavit, there is indication that one of the videos that catches him on November the 13th, it catches the vehicle front, and you can see that there's no tag there. And they say, yes, in the state of Pennsylvania, you don't need a front tag. So that's consistent with his vehicle. So what's the reason for mentioning that? Is that you would assume that you have a video of a white Elantra in the area of Moscow, Idaho. And neither Idaho nor the state very close to it, Washington, have this, allow you not to have a front tag. So both states require front and back tags. So that kind of narrows down the potential vehicle that would match what they see. So it basically helps point towards a vehicle from a state like Pennsylvania that doesn't require a front license tag, or Florida. Florida doesn't like it. It doesn't require either. So Sanger says, I disagree, ML. The presumption of innocence is a legal construct. It rightfully sets the field of play in court. Doesn't apply to us here with opinions. I believe he's guilty of sin. Now, I actually talk about that all the time. Presumption of innocence is a legal construct. I 100% agree with you about that. All I'm saying is that right now, preliminarily, we have very, very limited information. For you to believe that he's guilty of sin, I think is fair, because there's pretty much a lot of evidence pointing to him. And all I'm saying is, I, as a legal analyst, I can say, I think clearly that, yes, I believe that the guy, I believe that it looks really bad for him. I believe that they probably got the right guy. But I have hesitation in saying that he's guilty or that he was the killer without learning a lot more about the case. Because there are possible explanations that may be crazy that I've seen in many cases in my life that they haven't, the case is just at the very inception. It's hard to, to say, okay, well, this guy is 100% guilty. There is a strong evidence suggesting that this guy is the killer. There is strong evidence suggesting that. But, yeah, if it was just on what we have so far, I'll say, wow, they did a great job, and they found this guy, and yeah, it looks like he must be the one. And I can tell you this, I also can tell you that when I look at him, and his reaction as he's walking into the court, walking out of the court, looking at the cameras, smiling to his defense attorney, he gives me the vibes of somebody who's got a gleam in his eye. And if he's got a gleam in his eye, either he has a secret information that is going to totally exonerate him and make everybody look like a fool, which is a lot less likely, or he's really excited deep inside of his heart about how much attention this case has gotten. And I think that that's a more likely scenario. So yeah, I'm going to say this. Yes. The presumption of innocence doesn't mean that somebody is not guilty until proven guilty in real life. If the guy did it, even before it's proven in court, he's guilty. We have a system in place to make that official. But, we often can find out 100% without doubt, because there are 100 witnesses and 50 cameras caught the event, that somebody is guilty of something, of a murder that everybody saw. We know the person is guilty, but he hasn't yet been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. I think everybody who sees that evidence and sees that it's clear case of murder, without any provocation, without any possible self-defense, you can say, yeah, that's the killer. That's murder. In this particular case, we have a lot of evidence pointing towards Bryan Kohberger, but still we're just getting a one-sided picture of that evidence. And I'm not saying that he's not guilty. I'm saying that I want to have more before we make any final conclusions about this case, because there could be something crazy out there that that nobody heard about. So I think that cops absolutely did a sensational job in finding Kohberger. And I definitely think that everything in that affidavit seems very convincing. And if everything sticks the way that they suggest in the affidavit, he's likely going to be found guilty and either be sentenced to death or get life in prison. But we still don't know anything about what the defense is going to come up with. How are they going to be able to challenge the conclusions in the probable cause affidavit? It's just too early to make conclusions, final conclusions. I definitely hope that they got the right guy. I hope, not only because I want justice for those girls and Ethan, not girls, I mean, they were 20 and 21. I mean, to me, I'm 52, so they're girls, but they're young ladies. So to the young ladies and the young men, Ethan, they deserve justice, but primarily also, I don't want anyone else to be harmed. And if this guy was out there free, and if he was the killer, right, trying to become infamous, trying to be the next serial killer, then kudos to the cops. I mean, then, yeah, it's great that they have him in their custody. So, his dad had to change the plates. Okay, I don't want to speculate on stuff that is not on the probable cause affidavit. So DNA better way to go, but you could see the car in tandem with cell phone pings since June 13. Yeah. Obviously, what you really want is you want to have a lot of things that add together. I describe, proving a case beyond a reasonable doubt. I think that the best way to think of it is you have to build a mountain of evidence. And to get to the point of beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to get to, let's say, 1,000 meters high. And every piece of evidence has a different value. DNA has a ton of value. But it depends a little bit on the context and the possibility that it was a contamination. You can try to challenge a little bit the DNA, but it has a ton of value. Eyewitness testimony has some value, but not much. In this particular case, unfortunately, it looks like the testimony of Dylan is going to be very easy to challenge. It doesn't seem like it is very strong. So that part's not going to add a lot to that mountain. There's the cell phone towers and video evidence. The video evidence points to a white Elantra, but none of them shows the tag number, or even that it is a Pennsylvania tag. I mean, all this video from Pullman to this house to drive around everywhere, and they cannot find yet apparently one video that actually shows the tag, or at least the state of the tag. That would be concerning to me as a prosecutor. But again, I'm sure they're doing a very, very, very thorough job, and maybe they haven't gone through all the videos yet. Maybe there's like thousands of hours of videos to go through. So they may find more. They may find the tag, or at least something that looks like the Pennsylvania tag that he had before. So the cell phone tower records, the problem with that, we see that, I covered the case of the murder of FSU law professor Dan Markel here in Tallahassee. And what's going to happen with those experts when they testify is the other side is going to say, well, but those towers, sometimes there's something wrong with this tower, and the cell phone will connect with the tower that is far away. Or, and this cell phone tower covers a radius of 5 miles. So he could have been anywhere within this 5 miles, right? And then about the videos, the very suspicious videos of a white Elantra around the home where this murder happened, just in the seconds before the murders commence. That's just a white Elantra. And so, how common is that vehicle in the United States? How common is it? I mean, are there 1 million white Elantras in the United States driving? 2015 white Elantras? How many are out there? And the cell phone was off at that time, right? And unfortunately, this girl Dylan, the best she could say is a bushy eyebrow and a body type that kind of matches Kohberger. So I am usually pro prosecution, pro victims. I want for the law enforcement to have caught the right guy, and I want for law enforcement to do the job right, and I want the prosecutors to do the job right, and I want for justice to be served, and I want for no murders ever to happen again by this guy if he's the killer. That's what I want. I'm just telling you that we need to wait a little more, hopefully. And, right now, as we speak, as we're doing this video, all of this discussion could be moot. They can have 10 more pieces of evidence that point exactly to Bryan Kohberger being the killer, that make any possible little doubt that you can raise from the inaccuracies of the cell phone data, the millions of other Elantras in the United States and all this stuff that could just erase any doubt. So hopefully that's what's going to happen. Hopefully the investigation is ongoing, and I really truly hope that they find additional evidence, and then it will be a open and shut case, and it will be this guy and him by himself. But you can imagine, right? This guy come up with something like, hey, somebody responded to my Reddit, study research questions and told me to be at this location because he was gonna scare some girls, and I went there, and then this guy went in there with a knife. He showed me the knife first. I actually took it out. I'm like, that dude, why are you taking a knife? You're just gonna scare some ladies. Hey, don't worry, dude. I'm just gonna scare them. I mean, you gotta have something to scare them with. And then the guy goes in, goes out, and Kohberger says that he heard some weird noises, some whimpering, some crying. So he went in there to see if he could offer help. And then he realized, oh shit, they're all dead. I'm getting out of here. And as he was walking out, he saw out of the corner of his eye a girl. Like, shit, she's gonna think I did this. I'm out of here. You see what I'm saying? I mean, who knows? Obviously, I don't think that's the truth. But what? There's no data that backs. Oh, I don't know if you're talking about somebody else about racism, but we're not talking about racism or race issues here. So yeah, definitely cell phone towers have a range greater than 20 feet. That's for sure. I do hope you're correct about that, Natalie. I do hope so. Well, I don't know what Isabel said, but I cover crimes. Just if you're on this channel for the first time, all you have to do is go through the playlist. And I cover crimes with victims. I don't pay any attention to the victim's race. And I cover all kinds of cases. Now, whether, why did it come to my attention, other than the fact that everybody's talking about this case? It is because it's a horrible murder of 4 college students. It's similar to a crime that happened here in Tallahassee with Ted Bundy. This is obviously a horrible crime. I would feel the same way if it was for, minority students. I'm minority as well, so kind of Hispanic. So anyway, I understand, Mark. No problem. Thanks. And that's not an issue that really interests me. I just want to talk about the actual case. So why there's attention to it or not is really not interesting to me. I only really care about victims of cases, and I cover all kinds of cases. So, all right, everybody, I think that's good for tonight. I got a million other things on my list of things to do, but this was one of them. I wanted to get it to you. I see I have to make a couple of corrections to the document. And like I said, it is a living document. So if you have learned of something official, new, that you can direct me to, you can put it on the comments, the real comments, and I'll go take a look. I know somebody donated 99 cents and I did not acknowledge them, and I do want to apologize for that. I'm going to see if I can try to find it. So I can thank you. And hello to everybody that I did not say hi to. I know that many of my long-term followers have been here. There, Nancy Daniel, thank you so much. She's a long-term supporter, so I appreciate it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Well, I think that you cannot discount moments. I think you cannot discount the videos of the car, because obviously, you know, there are maybe a million, maybe there's 100,000 white Elantras in the United States. I don't know. In Canada, right? Because they're not too far from Canada. So, I mean, there are a lot of cameras around, and if on that particular night they only caught one, and it happened to be 2015, that didn't have a front tag, that narrows it down a little bit. But then when you add the cell phone records on top of that and prior activities in the area, it's not so bad. Like I said, obviously it could be better, but it's not so horrible. It's not just the DNA, there's more. So anyway, thanks everybody. Until next time, Mentour Lawyer. Thanks you so much for watching, and the next material will probably be on something else, on the Amy Day case. That's what I'm working next. I'm gonna transfer most of the Amy Day materials to one of my backup channels, the interrogation room, Mentour Lawyer, the interrogation room. All right, thanks for watching everybody. Until next time, Mentour Lawyer. Good night, or good day for some of you.